This is Truthful Manipulation, where truth is the truth and reality is made real and clear to understand. I'm Dave Kelsey, and I'm here today with my co-host, H. Daniel Mujahid. On this week's episode of Truthful Manipulation, we're going to take on a subject that I fought Daniel on for pretty close to a year now, because I said I never wanted this show to become religious in nature. But I think we've come to a time in history where we don't have a choice but to go back and look at what Revelation actually says.
Revelation, considered the last book in the book we call the Bible, is actually the first book in the book that we call the Quran, which is really referring to the book of life, Quran. And yes. So as a treat for you and an insight for you and a challenge for you, I thought I would take a build on an outline Dave gave us to review in terms of organizing what's happening in the world today, the world that we all live in, the human world. This is Earth. And what we find as a key insight to you, we'd like to begin with having you think about what is really being said in the book of Revelation called chapter 13. Which is a discussion from the God to you about what happens when a presiding schemer is given immunity and public worship.
Well, Daniel, isn't it funny? And I said this, it just so happened that the day that this supposed assassination attempt happened, I happened to be watching TV at the time that happened. And the first thing that I said when that happened is that son of a bitch just blood packed his ear and made it look like he was shot at, even though he wasn't shot at. And let me tell you this. If you take an AR-15 round to the ear, you're going to have a chunk of that ear missing. And when I look at this man, I don't see any part of that ear missing. So either Revelation 13 is actually true, and the world got schemed and deceived and mocked, and now we're all being mocked by this gentleman. But if you continue down that passage, you'll also find out that there wasn't just one beast. There were two beasts. And I have to tell you today, I got a pretty good idea who that other beast is, because in past episodes, I've said to you, who's pulling the strings of the puppet? And I can truly say to you today that it's a man that is not a Christian. He proclaims to be Jewish, which precludes him from being a Christian as we know it. But he is pulling the strings behind the scenes, and he is turning people against each other, just like it says will happen in Revelation 13. But the evangelical preachers out there today are so worried about their frickin' pocketbooks that none of them are speaking this particular language. I've gone to an evangelical church for over 30 years. In the last 15 years, I've never heard the people in that church or any other church preach on this particular passage, because they know this particular passage takes us to a place that they really don't feel comfortable being in, since they're the ones that back this creature.
Now, let's absorb this. The key ingredient here for people of faith, and even those who say they don't have a practicing faith, the key ingredient is what you believe. And what you'll find is that our belief is a strong indicator of our intelligence, our will, our desire, and our destiny, our belief system. You know,
Daniel, the question to that is do you really believe what you say you believe? Or are you just out there shooting your mouth off because it's the appropriate thing you think to do at this time? But are you actually speaking the truth? And I don't see anyone in the evangelical community speaking the truth. In fact, every single night on the news, on the national news, you have Franklin Graham come on there and ask people to pray the prayer of faith. Well, Franklin Graham is a piece of shit. He has been for a long time. I saw this man pray over the beast at the Republican National Convention last year. He actually prayed over the beast that's mentioned in Revelation 13. And guess what? Not one evangelical stood up and said, that's wrong.
now, America, listen, what we are trying to discuss together, we're trying to feel your ideas and your experiences. We feel them because we're part of you. So we are talking with you. The political climate, the political scene in America now has elected a presider with an illegitimate form of authority that allows complicity and acceptance of him mimicking what you might call the truthful one.
Well, what's Revelation 13 say about that, Daniel? Just have a look at it. It says that the whole world will bend their knee to the one that's evil. And what is the whole world doing right now? You tell me, Daniel, what is the whole world doing right now except for the brave people of the U.S. that are going enough's enough and we aren't going to take this shit out of you assholes anymore?
Exactly. So you end up with a scene where you have one who is really imposturing, speaking as though he is God, but lying like a dragon, a mouth full of flaming
Well,
blasphemy.
he's mouthful of flaming horse shit, that's for sure, because everything that this guy says is a lie. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what people missed along the way that they thought that it would be a good idea to put a convicted felon and somebody who thinks that he's above the rest of the human race. This isn't a man that talks about doing good for everybody. This is a man that talks about taking food away from people that are hungry. This is a man that talks about taking health care away from people that actually need it.
Dave, you outlined for our listeners, you outlined a wonderful piece of work that begins with reminding us that we have to recognize the signs of manipulation by leaders. Our rulers, they have a goal, they have a context, they have a desire. You hope that would be in the best interest of the American people, but slowly, one by one, block by block, company by company, school by school, we begin to realizing the agenda of our presider has nothing to do with our best, but everything to do with his personal gain.
His personal gain and his personal pocketbook. How much money has this guy stolen from the American people? And now he's trying to steal $212 million that belongs to the American people because he thinks he was unjustly prosecuted. Well, you know what? I've said this before. There's a difference between persecution and prosecution, and this asshole has no idea that he has been prosecuted, not persecuted.
Now, Dave, your logic leads us to your second point there, wherein we know already ahead of time we're going to be criticized for this podcast. But you know what? I asked the criticizer, and I asked you, the listener, is this the right time to be cherry picking, giving all the confusion, the chaos, the ill, the ugly, the starving that we're seeing, witnessing day to day? Is this the right time to be cherry picking? I don't like the way Daniel said that.
Well, they might not like the way I said it. And I've said this to you a long time. You don't have to like me. I don't care if you like me or not. But I'm telling you the truth. And if you don't like the truth, too damn bad.
Now, Dave, you said the word truth, and the one thing that is also coming to attention of the American people, we tend to do things categorically. You know, we tend to, for example, we'll say, well, Trump, he speaks half truths. That is not correct. If you say quarter truths, that'll be closer to correct.
Yeah, bullshit. Bullshit. 99% of the things that come out of his mouth are a lie. He doesn't care about the American people. The only thing that this presider gives two shits about is how big his bank account is going to be as he leaves office. And trust me, all of these morons that he's put into politics along with him, or positions of power, the vast majority of them couldn't find their ass with a tour guide. And that's what we've got today. But yet not one evangelical is speaking the truth and calling evil, evil. But yet over the weekend, we had a Democratic Party that virtually thumped these guys all over the U.S. because the American people are getting sick of the nonsense and the lies.
Now, Dave, I like you did a reference. I think you kind of stole what I would call a Barack Obama-ism on this one, though, when you said, hey, America, we the people, don't get emotional, get evidence.
And with evidence, that will set you free. So I suggest that everyone sit down and read Revelation 13 and decipher it for yourself. And once you've had a chance to read that chapter, I think it'd be even better for you if you went to your computer and sat down with ChatGPT and said to it, please give me an explanation of what Revelation 13 actually means. And you're going to see that we are living in a time that's been manipulated. It's been created by those in charge, and even to the point where they faked an assassination attempt and killed somebody to do it, and nobody said anything about it. But gee, that's just this guy's standard operating procedure, because last time I checked, he's blowing innocents out of the water down in Venezuela because he feels like it. And you know what that is? That's called crimes against humanity. We don't have the right to just kill people because we feel that we can kill them. That's wrong. Even that Bible that you guys proclaim that you cling to as everything says murder is wrong, but yet you got a murderer in the White House. You've got a murderer in the cabinet. You've got a murderer that's doing all of these things to other people. You even went so far as he tried to cut off SNAP benefits to American people, once again trying to murder part of the population. You want to know why? Because we won't bend a knee to his every whim.
Now, these claims and positions that we see our federal administration trying to get us to accept, they can be traced. And we have to be willing to do the tracing, the following the money, as Dave called it. We have to be willing to listen to what is being proposed and see who really benefits from these so-called incentives were we to accept them? And what we'll find is an agenda that does not include us one by one. You really remember the idea of not responding because the person being attacked wasn't you until all of a sudden the person being attacked is you. That's where we are together. The good thing about it, America, is that we're still together. We're more together on that than we are in terms of ideas of what America ought to be, but we have a basis by which we can move forward, as say in the language, towards a more perfect union. We weren't perfect in our conception. We were perfect in our hopes and goals and intention.
Well, you'd hope that those that are in charge would have the same feelings, but I'm going to put out a challenge today. I am no theologian. I don't claim to be a theologian, but I do know the truth. And I challenge any theologian out there to challenge my viewpoint on this. Get a hold of us, truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com. I'm giving you an opportunity. If you want to challenge me, you challenge me. But don't be surprised, before it's done, I'm going to make you look very foolish in the end, because all of you evangelicals can't see your daylight ahead of you because you've got your head so far up your rear ends and you're worshiping something that never should have been worshiped. You're treating something as if it's God when it's the devil incarnate.
Well, this idea is explained very well when you have the good insights that we don't have as Americans to see this point that we're in as having two beasts. Now, the Quran, it will describe it slightly differently so that we can get the nature of what's the scheme and also the nature of the schemer. But the schemer being one of those dragons, and the actual game, if you will, the plot, the actual manipulation itself, being that manipulation machine itself is a type of devil. So this is why we say it is described as having two horns, and they work to cause destruction to the masses.
It doesn't have anything to do with two horns, Daniel. It has to do with two assholes. You got one that's in charge, and then you got one that's pulling the strings of the one that's in charge, because let's face it, the one that's in charge can't even hardly keep his eyes open. Today he laid a wreath at the grave of the unknown soldier in Washington, D.C., and as he's standing there before he walked up, he can barely keep his eyes open. That's your Jesus that all of you think and prescribe and worship today. That's him right there. A feeble man that's lost his mind, that's controlled by devils in his own party and cabinet.
America, we want to give you some time to think about this, maybe respond to it, maybe even challenge us back. It's okay. We're confident that what has played out in America is really the proof of scripture and the proof of science, because science is what we observe and learn, in a methodical way. Scripture is what was given as a way to understand what we would experience in our life. Scripture isn't written. The cleverness of scripture is not that it applies thousands of years ago. The power and the real importance is to realize that it is to be applied the way you live your life today. And if you can understand that these concepts of life and living and being are real and are to be understood, then you can see how those that would manipulate you, those that would manipulate your communities, your neighborhoods, those that would try to provide the narrative to explain what is happening right and what is happening wrong in your community, it has a hidden goal of making sure that only the beneficiaries who have that mark, if you will, as it's called, or that commitment or that loyalty to that person benefits, and no one else is to benefit. Even if you all fall under the same group as being called Americans, if you don't support this idea of what America is, you can't benefit. If you don't support this color of what an American should be, you can't benefit. If you don't represent the gender of what America really is in a John Wayne kind of way, then you can't benefit.
Well, America, think about this. Look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, am I cruel? Am I unforgiving? Am I diligent in my beliefs? Or am I following along because it's convenient to follow along? Well, we no longer have the opportunity to be convenient because we've got devils in our midst and they're actually running our country and they're trying to run all of us. And when Daniel talks about the mark of the beast, it doesn't have anything to do with a mark. It has to do with what your affiliation is. Do you affiliate with the beast or do you affiliate with the Christ?
That's no accident that this affiliation Dave is talking about is given scripturally as being the heel. Isn't it amazing that this blasphemer attacks the heel of the woman, right? Well, the heel of the woman is the same as the healing of the nation. So we can't get through racism if we're going to let someone keep biting at that. What would heal us? What would heal us is to communicate, to work together, to discuss together. That would heal us. But this presider bites that with blasphemy, with schemes, with unproven realities, with manipulated actions that work against the goodness in each of us, that pose that our doing our job is evil if we're not being loyal to the presider's idea. If we challenge the presider, we are evil. If we think for ourselves, we're evil. Come on, America.
It's time to wake up, America. And that's this week's episode of Truthful Manipulation. Please get a hold of us with your comments today. I'm sure that you've got them. I would have if I heard this at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe at truthfulmanipulation.com.
Don't forget to get a copy of our road map, Truthful Manipulation.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for weekly updates. I'll guarantee you this one will be one that you're going to want to see. Thank you very much for your time this week. We appreciate all of you, even if you don't appreciate what we had to say. Thank you, America.